D.C. Congresswoman, thanks for being with us. Sorry that it is under these circumstances.
Thanks for having me. My question for you is, we hear of the shooting in Texas, and I'm just sick to my stomach. I'm thinking you might feel the same. Then we have the second shooting in Ohio this weekend. Paint a picture for me of your actions this weekend and today.
Sure. I mean, it's so hard to get those notifications and talk to my team about, what are we going to say this time, right? And it's becoming increasingly difficult to say the same thing over and over again. And even for my staff, this feeling of helplessness is substantial. I'm having a debrief with my staff about, tomorrow we're having a meeting just to talk about what are we going to be able to do. And the reality is that we have done a lot in Congress. We have passed 4 different pieces of legislation that would have a significant impact. We've passed H.R. 8, which, as you know, is the universal background checks. We've closed the Charleston loophole. That's H.R. 1112, which is making sure that when people, if you don't get information back within 3 days, then you actually can't you still can't get the gun for up to 30 days. It was the Charleston shooting. It would have prevented that. And then we have the Violence Against Women Act, which closes the boyfriend loophole. And then lastly, we have an appropriations bill that actually funds research through the CDC to look into the causes and real solutions to this problem. So we've got 4 pieces of legislation that are literally just sitting in the Senate. So when we talk about common sense solutions, ones that are overwhelmingly supported by the public, we've got to put the pressure on the Senate. They should be coming back tomorrow and taking a vote on those issues. And the House stands ready to reconvene as well as soon as the time comes that we can, take that legislation back and vote on something to sign it into law.
And of course, the Democratic leader of the Senate is asking for that emergency session. The Republican leader of the Senate, who is the one who needs to actually make that call, is not pushing for that. And you mentioned this issue of this cycle. We see this cycle over and over again. There's a shooting. Democrats call for gun control. Republicans say there needs to be something done about mental health. A few days go by, and then nothing happens. We wait a few weeks, maybe a few days. There's another shooting. We do it again. How does that ever change? How do you break the cycle?
If I can be totally honest with you, we have to put the pressure on the people who are stopping something from happening, right? Who is willing to do something. And we've passed the legislation through the House that is democratically controlled. You have people in the Senate, Republican leadership in the Senate, who is not willing to take that up. So frankly, we've got to vote Mitch McConnell out. And the only way that that's going to happen, either he changes his behavior through public pressure or he gets voted out. And I think that is literally the only way that something can change. So I think every single person who cares about this issue should be calling his office, writing letters, protesting in front of his office, whatever it's going to take until we cannot let up until he has to take this up. And frankly, if that doesn't work, the only solution is, donating to the campaigns of people who are running against him and putting in all of that effort to change that seat over, because it is absolutely outrageous that we know solutions that would absolutely make a difference, and he's just completely unwilling.
Where do you stand on this discussion of red flag gun laws, which basically allows a family member to petition a judge to say, hey, I'm concerned about this member of my family, and maybe the gun should be taken away? Where do you stand on that?
I think that that's a really crucial way for us to go, and actually one of my colleagues who's from Southern California, Salud Carbajal, has a piece of legislation that I really want us to take up when we get back, that provides for that on a national level. And I'm glad to hear that it's gaining some traction on a bipartisan basis. It had not previously. So I think that this could be the moment that we can really push that through. It provides for law enforcement officials, for family members to flag this kind of behavior. We do have warning signs, behavioral warning signs. I hate when it gets conflated with mental health, but behavioral warning signs are substantial. They're there, and trained professionals can identify those and can intervene and take weapons away, can take other measures to prevent violence before it happens. And actually, another piece of legislation that is bipartisan that I'm an original co-sponsor on is called the TAPS Act. It's the Threat Assessment Prevention and Safety Act, and it provides resources to law enforcement agencies on a national basis to come together and really implement those kinds of screening mechanisms and ways of predicting and intervening on potential mass casualty incidents before they happen.
Let's talk for a moment about the president as well, because this shooter was a white nationalist. And some in your party, including some people running for president, say that the president himself is a white nationalist and say that he bears responsibility for what happened here. Do you think that President Trump is a white nationalist, and do you think that he and his words are in part responsible for a shooting like this?
Well, listen, I'm not going to classify him as anything. I don't think that that's helpful. But I do think that his rhetoric has become, well, has been over the entire course of him being in the public eye, is as a political figure, has been incredibly divisive and dangerous. And the more time that goes on where you are painting immigrants as a threat or as as something that's dangerous to people here, the more that you're going to radicalize this belief that they are an other, that can add to this white nationalism, that can add to this dangerous belief that there's some kind of there's some kind of non-human that could be the target of a hatred, a hate-filled crime like a mass shooting. And so, I'm glad that we heard some acknowledgement of that from the president today, but he needs to be going to every one of his rallies and saying the exact same thing that he said today, not just something from a teleprompter.
And just to wrap things up, yes or no, this is the poll question that we're asking people today. Are you optimistic that something is different this time, that something's actually going to get done? Are you optimistic that Congress actually passes something?
Well, again, we need to be really clear, because Congress, the House, has passed something. They've passed 4 things, and we're probably going to come back and pass more.
Are you optimistic that the Senate is going to pass something? Do you think Mitch McConnell's actually going to do this?
I think that this is potentially a turning point, and but anyone who cares about this, we cannot let up that pressure on Mitch McConnell.
All right, Congressman
Katie Hill, thank you so much for your time. There's so much more to talk about, but we've got to let it go here. We appreciate it, and I know she's been a guest with you, Alex, on The Issue Is, on your political show, and will be so in the future.
Several times, yes. Thank you, Congresswoman.